Virgin Most Powerful Radio, sharing the gospel with clarity and charity.
And now, Virgin Most Powerful Radio is pleased to present Hands-On Apologetics with renowned Catholic author and apologist, Gary Michuta.
And welcome, everybody. Hands-On Apologetics. You have entered into Virgin Most Powerful's Apologetics Dojo, and it's great to be with you today. We're moving along here in the dojo. It's weird. We're getting snow flurries outside at the Midwest Command Center. Even as a kid, I always felt like after Easter it should be warm, and so I always anticipate that like spring will just all of a sudden appear. But not the case, and I'm sure it's because our Lord wishes us to, long for our ultimate light and heat, which is His glory Himself. So anyway, it's great to be with you today. We're going to talk about a subject today that is huge on the demographic screen as far as religions are concerned, and that is this growing segment of people who claim to be spiritual but not religious. And, what's interesting about this segment of the population, which is growing, it's really former Christians who have rejected organized religion, I guess you could say, and adopted beliefs and practices that more or less correspond to the New Age movement. And so it's important for us to understand what is the New Age movement, maybe some key beliefs, also especially how that affects and to what extent, New Age thought has seeped into this spiritual but not religious segment of the population. And to help us do that, we actually have someone who is a convert from that former thought system, and that would be Christine Flynn, our good friend Christine Flynn of the Catholic Mama podcast is going to be joining us on the other side of the break. And she's going to talk about how life was when she was just simply spiritual and not religious. And hopefully, we'll get some great insights into how this feathers into the New Age movement. So it's going to be a really great segment. I can't wait to have her on the show. Again, that's going to be after the first break. We also have our Finding the Fallacy, which is the red herring fallacy. And also our Meet the Early Church Father for today is an Athenagoras of Athens. I almost mispronounced it. An Athenagoras of Athens. Not exactly a household name, but a very important apologist of the second Christian century. So that'll be loads of fun as well. But let's not forget, I want to give my shout-outs and welcomes to all of you watching live stream on Facebook and YouTube. Hello, everybody. Thank you, Ricky. Also, all the other gang over there in Facebook land, or YouTube land. Can't get those two mixed up. I also want to welcome all of you listening to radio around the country and also around the world. We have a lot of international listeners via podcast. And in fact, I just got a message right before the show. This is probably why I got Facebook and YouTube mixed up. Got a Facebook message from a fellow who's out of the country who's a big fan of the show. And so that's awesome. So I want to welcome all of you. You're all in our prayers, and please keep us here at Virgin Most Powerful Radio. Please all of you keep us in your prayers. Spread the word, share it with friends, especially do all those social media type thingies, like subscribe. We have a Hands-On Apologetics channel on YouTube. Also, thumbs up, all the other stuff. Really appreciate it. All right, so let's see if you have a question, by the way, for Christine Flynn. Give us a call toll-free at 888-526-2151. That is 888-526-2151. And as always, you can send our emails. It's always cool to get email questions, and some really good ones, too. Someday, I'm going to try to feather those in. I don't know how I'm going to do it in the show. I might have to change the format a little bit, but I want to kind of feather in some of these questions because there's some great questions out there. And to email your question, the dojo mailbox address is questions@handsonapologetics.com. That's questions@handsonapologetics, all one word, .com. And I do reply and respond to each email. Not always timely, but I do try to do that. So please keep them coming, and thank you, all of you who have been patiently waiting for my response. I totally appreciate it. And let's see, I think I've taken care of everything. Let's jump to our segment, shall we? Let's sharpen our critical thinking skills with defining the fallacy. Each episode we look at informal fallacy, and this helps us to think critically. And man, we need critical thinking today more than ever. Just in the climate, cultural climate, political climate, we need to be able to spot fallacious arguments. And today's fallacy is indeed a very common one and a very tricky one, too. It's called the red herring fallacy. No, it has nothing to do with a fish. The red herring fallacy is actually a way of throwing people off a trail. Okay, so if you're discussing something with somebody, a red herring would be to throw an argument, an accusation, or a statement that really is off topic. It may seem to be related, but it really isn't related. And usually red herrings are attractive. They want you to divert you off your stream of thought, off your argumentation, onto this rabbit trail. Okay? And I think that's why the fallacy is named red herring, because it's a stinky fish, or it can be a stinky fish. And that could definitely throw somebody off the trail. So if you're talking about papal infallibility, for example, as Friday we're going to have Eric Ibarra come on the show and talk about the foundations for papal infallibility. And someone says, yeah, but look at all the sinful popes, and they might name great sinners of the past and things like that. That is so attractive to jump on the bandwagon and go off the topic of infallibility into impeccability. Is it true that popes are sinless, which they're not? But nevertheless, that would be a great example of the red herring. It's kind of related to the papacy, but it has nothing to do with papal infallibility. And so beware of red herring fallacies. They like I said, they're so attractive, and if you aren't careful, you could think that somebody's making a great point, but actually that great point has nothing to do with the subject at hand. So keep that in mind, the red herring fallacy. Let's jump to the Meet the Early Church Father for today. Like I said, he's not a household name, but he's a very important second century Christian apologist. His name is Athenagoras of Athens. Nothing at all is known about Athenagoras, except what little bit can be gleaned from his own writings. For in all ancient literature, he is mentioned only once by Methodius of Olympus, who also goes by several different names, having taken a passing note of him in his treatise on the resurrection. Athenagoras was a Christian philosopher in Athens, and if we can trust the manuscript title of his Supplications for Christians, he was a contemporary of both St. Justin Martyr and Tatian the Syrian, both of which we just recently discussed on the show. So he's writing in the middle of the second Christian century. His rhetorical ability, according to Jurgen's Faith of the Early Fathers, far exceeds Justin Martyr, and he writes in a very attractive style of Greek. And whereas Tatian the Syrian was given to polemical contentiousness, Athenagoras knows better, not to antagonize with insults those whom he hopes to help to influence. So he's a lot more calmer, less antagonistic than Tatian the Syrian, and much more stylish and rhetorical than Justin Martyr. So he kind of fits nicely in between those two. Of the time of his birth and how long he lived, we don't have a clue. And he's just one of those fathers where, in terms of biographical information, just not a lot about him. All we know is that he probably flourished sometime around or after, maybe a little after 180 AD. But what about the one writing we do have of them? It's called The Supplication of Christians. It was written between the years 176 and 180 AD, probably around 177. And it's an appeal for understanding. It's addressed to the Emperor Marcus Aurelius and to his son, the Emperor Commodus, in which he is given the imperial title in 176 AD. The work refutes the accusations made by pagans against Christians of atheism, cannibalism, incest, and ends with a calm entreaty for just judgment. Unlike Tatian, Athenagoras' pen provides light, not heat. So that's kind of his trademark. You might be thinking, wow, that's really strange that Christians would be, cannibalism and incest. How did they come up with that? Well, I recommend my book, Hostile Witnesses. I actually treat this. It really has to do with, pagans' observations of Christian worship and sacraments. Of course, with the Eucharist, when we say that we eat the flesh and drink the blood of Christ, to paganize, that's cannibalism. And what about incest? Well, the Eucharistic feast was also known as the love feast. And Christians would call each other brother and sister. And so the pagans picked up on it and gave it the worst possible spin you could take on it and accuse us of incest. So, not exactly great. But, on the other hand, in my book, Hostile Witness, what I show is that this is kind of a left-handed compliment. It actually shows something about the beliefs of the early Christians, specifically cannibalism, because it shows that Christians, even at this early date, again, middle 2nd century, believed in the real and substantial presence of Christ in the Eucharist, and the realism of that belief led pagans to misunderstand us. And that's our early church father for today in Athenagoras. And coming up next, we have Christine Flynn. We're going to be talking about the New Age and also the spiritual, not religious. Stay tuned, folks. Listen to Hands on Apologetics.
This is Terry Barber. I want to thank you for supporting Virgin Most Powerful Radio. And here's an easy way to support us by going to smile.amazon.com and type in Catholic Resource Center or Virgin Most Powerful Radio. And when you log in your Amazon account and you purchase products, a portion of it will go right back in supporting Virgin Most Powerful Radio. And it doesn't cost you a dime. I want to thank you ahead of time because that supports us year-round. May God bless you and your family.
Did you know my mom's gonna have a baby?
She is? Will it be a boy? Or will it be a girl?
We don't know yet, but we heard the heartbeat and my dad said this is gonna be someone very special.
You mean like being a president? Or maybe a doctor?
Well, probably maybe like a singer or dancer, I think.
Hello, my name is Mary Ann Koharski. I'm the director of Pro-Life Across America. We know that every baby is a miracle and has the potential to do great things. If you know someone who is pregnant or in need of alternatives or assistance or would like to support the work of Pro-Life Across America, please call 1-800-366-7773 or visit our website at prolifeacrossamerica.org. Pro-Life Across America is non-political and totally educational.
Pro-Life Across America, the Billboard people.
This is Terry Barber. I want to thank you for your support here at Virgin Most Powerful Radio. Here's an easy way to do it. If you're going to sell or buy a house, call Real Estate for Life, 877-543-3871, because they're going to get you a Christ-centered agent to purchase your home or to sell your home. And at the close of escrow, a portion of his commission goes right back to Virgin Most Powerful Radio. Call 877-543-3871. Thank you so much for your support.
Now, back to Hands on Apologetics with Gary Machuda. If you'd like to join the conversation, call 888-526-2151. Here's Gary.
And welcome back, everybody, to Hands On Apologetics. And we're talking about this growing segment of the population known as the spiritual but not religious category, and really how it's been influenced by New Age thought and the New Age movement. And to kind of help clarify, that strange mixture of beliefs, we have with us Christine Flynn. By the way, Christine is the Catholic mama. She's the wife and mother of four, wife of Pat Flynn, mother of four. She's a convert to the faith. Christine's podcasts and blogs are all about Catholicism to help fellow parents feel more sure about their faith and raise confident Catholic children. You can head to her website, which is thecatholicmama.com, all one word. And by the way, once you get there, you can grab a free ebook, which is How to Talk to Your Kids About God, which helps parents answer tough theological questions simply and truthfully. And Christine, welcome back to Hands On Apologetics.
Thank you very much for having me.
Well, it's always a joy to have you on board. And how are things going at the Flynn household?
You know what? We're doing okay. I was just thinking that any chance I can get to go in a room by myself and talk to another adult is just pure joy, especially right now. So, this is great. But we're doing okay. Thankfully, because we do a lot of online stuff anyway, and we homeschool, our day-to-day life has stayed pretty on par with what it was.
Okay, good. So, not too big of an interruption.
Not yet. We'll see. Who knows? Every day brings something new, doesn't it?
Yeah. Well, I hear what you say about escapability. That was one of those features when we were looking for a house. One of the things we were looking for is where can we go to get away when we need to? So I totally appreciate that perspective.
Yeah, where we used to live, we had a third floor finished attic, but it didn't have central air, and there was no way to get, the window was too small for a window unit, an air conditioning unit. So the attic was unusable for half the year. Now we have a nice, quiet space that we can go to any time of the year to get away if we need to.
There you go. Yeah. So, let's talk a little bit about your past. You were on, I think once before, maybe more, but just to bring people up to speed, tell us a little bit about your journey of faith.
Yeah, sure. So I grew up in, I always want to say this, a very loving household, but it was definitely anti-religious, at least anti-organized religion. There was certainly a bias towards that. My parents are both fallen away Catholics. And my dad's more on the skeptical front. You got to show me. And my mom trended towards New Age. And, being with my mother a lot, I just picked that up as well. And it just spoke to, finding that inner goddess and that joining yourself to a divine spark or whatever the jargon is, just really resonated with me over time, feelings based. So, I just wound up moving from a general acceptance that there was a creator when I was pretty young to feeling like, I am God, God is me, it's the universe, we're all joined. And, that progressively, it sounded all nice and seemed very accepting on the outside of other people's journeys and where they were. But over time, it made me quite narcissistic and withdrawn. I'm an introvert by nature. So it really enabled me to keep people away, which was a very comfortable place for me. But eventually, there are problems in this world, either personal tragedies or global ones. And I started really feeling the effects of the problem of suffering and evil, and that my religious beliefs or spiritual beliefs didn't offer a really good explanation for that. It just wasn't satisfying over time. And I wound up just going to a point of despair and eventually eschewing any religious or spiritual beliefs, and there was just nothing, and became a very unhappy atheist. It wasn't until I had my own children and really saw the love that I had for them that it couldn't just be that there was nothing and that this is all just happenstance and chaotic. But I just became really hopeful that maybe there was something more that could explain the love that I felt for my children, and that at the end of our lifetimes, it wouldn't just end in a poof. And that happens to be Catholicism. And so Pat, my husband, who's been on your show many times, he was going through his own conversion, and he was taking a more philosophical route. But, a lot of my beliefs were feelings based, and I needed to see that there was a good, I was a little burned by all that feeling stuff, and I needed to see hard historical facts and get I needed to know that it was logical, because I was just so, like I said, burned by the feelings based stuff of the New Age and spiritual but not religious beliefs that I had held before. And I was able to find out that Jesus actually is a historical figure, that he is God and man. And it all just came together. And I spent a long time searching, a lot of questions that I felt that I just was going to spend the rest of my life looking for answers for. And thank God, literally, that that's not the case. And I found a lot of very satisfying answers in the faith.
Yeah, beautiful. Yeah, so I guess before we begin, we should probably define what, in fact, somebody in the chat room, I think it was M. Mousepel, said, what spiritual but not religious, what does that mean? What is spiritual but not religious?
Yeah, I think you can probably use New Age or spiritual but not religious interchangeably in a lot of cases. A New Age just might sound a little too woo-woo, or maybe just out of vogue now, because you see a lot of, a Pew Research study will go out and a lot of people will check that spiritual but not religious box. And that really means that they are open to some higher power, some energy, life force of the universe, and believes that we're probably all connected to it in some way. But as far as an organized patriarchal religion goes, no thanks for them. They'll just have more of a personal experience of the divine.
Yeah. When New Age movement was just getting off the ground, I remember going to a huge chain bookstore, and they had a shelf. It was listed as metaphysics. And
interesting.
Through a title, it was like, this isn't metaphysics. This is UFOs and all sorts of weird stuff. And but it was only later that they started labeling it New Age. So it was kind of like New Age didn't want to have a label. It wanted to kind of be more of a philosophy.
Yeah. Which philosophy and psychology are both play heavily into the New Age movement. And if you go to like a chain bookstore, it'll still say New Age. There'll be spirituality next to it. I don't think they've changed it to be spiritual but not religious yet on their titles. Or if you search for a book on Amazon, it'll come up as New Age will be that subgenre.
Yeah. So in your experience of those who had labeled themselves spiritual but not religious, how many of them do you think are actually New Agers that just don't want to be called New Agers?
I don't know, because you look at the numbers, and true atheists are pretty small. I mean, it's only a couple of percentages of the whole U.S. population when the studies come in. Mm-hmm. As far as the New Age, I would imagine. I mean, there's agnostics in there. New Age spiritual people. It's so difficult because it has infiltrated our society in so many ways that it's difficult, I think, to put an exact number on it. I was at the gym a few months ago, of course, before they closed their doors. And I noticed that on a Sunday morning, like smack in the time of the usual mass times, was a yoga workshop of finding your inner goddess that they were encouraging you to go for. And that all sounds well and good. Like, oh, yeah, I need to tap into who I am as a woman or something like that. And I thought it was so interesting that it coincided with the time that, Christians would be going to church.
Yeah.
It's completely, it seems innocuous, but it really isn't. It's pulling us away from these long-held Judeo-Christian beliefs that have, a good culture is really embedded, or, that's the bedrock of a solid culture. Yeah. So, but it's difficult because you have so many Christians who may read their horoscopes or may feel like they can go find their inner goddess. So I don't know, like an exact number of somebody who would say, I am New Age, I'm raising my hand, I'm spiritual but not religious, and I believe that, I can communicate with some kind of my higher being in the spirit realm. Yeah, I don't know the number of that. That's an interesting question.
Yeah, I mean, even in the New Age, my experience is most of them are dabblers. There's no strict definition of New Age thought. It's more of a collection of thoughts, and somebody could be in one thing, and another person could be in another thing, but they're still.
It's just it's a big umbrella term that has a lot of freedom in it, which is probably why it has taken such hold of our culture, the modern culture today, because it speaks to a lot of things that modern people value: autonomy, freedom, it not having to deal with some kind of more personal experience rather than a set dogma. So these are things that we just value in our modern culture and minds anyway. Yeah. But it doesn't mean that we're going to really go whole hog and embrace it and put it on a bumper sticker for us personally. But it really has infiltrated so many areas, and that's why we see such a growth in those spiritual but not religious people, because it sounds nice, but it really is a very dangerous thing.
Yeah, very good. Yeah, that's it's very dangerous in that. I think the most dangerous aspect of New Age thought is that it's fantasy-based. It's not reality-based. It's kind of whatever you can imagine is true,
Yeah, there's
as
no way to
opposed to
test
Catholicism,
Right,
the exact opposite.
Yeah. It's based on the actual historical figure of Jesus Christ, and we can verify that he existed and the events of his life happened. But with New Age, it really is just what your personal experiences are. A dream that you have is as valid as the actual person of Christ in this thought process, which is just unreal.
Yeah, that makes it very difficult to do apologetics with them, because sometimes even logic doesn't, or reason doesn't work. It's how can you believe
because it is so feelings based. Yeah, it is. I mean, again, we are heading or have headed into a culture that just, I feel that. I feel everything's feelings, which is great. I mean, we all have feelings, but you need to be able to base something in actual truth and reality. And it's pretty impossible to, and it's hard to argue against it, which, is a tough thing from an apologetic standpoint. But it also, there is hope there in that so many people are searching for answers. And I think I mentioned this last time I was on your show. I went to a Stoic conference, and Dr. Kevin Vost, who is a Catholic convert, was there speaking about Stoicism and Catholicism. And during the Q&A session afterwards, so many people had questions about karma and reincarnation, and they were just struggling so much to make sense of their lives and the state of the world now. And all I could think of is, man, the answer to that question is Catholicism, and the answer to that question is Catholicism. But it's it's so difficult to say that without coming off across as being a jerk. But also to let them know that the answers are there and they want them. So we just have to join them up in the way that they, they're receptive to them, which is more feelings and emotion based.
Yeah, very good, very good. We're chatting with Christine Flynn, thecatholicmama.com. Check out her podcast. More to come on the other side of the break. Stay tuned.
Hi, this is Jesse Romero from the Terry and Jesse Show, also from Jesus 911. Let's face it, we all need to use the internet, but we need screen accountability. Why? Pornography is a huge problem, especially on the internet. And every time we tap into the internet, we get bombarded with images and temptations that degrade our humanity. So we need Covenant Eyes to block these pornographic sites and advertisements from infiltrating our lives. Covenant Eyes helps us take custody of our eyes and custody of our intellect. So I recommend you go to covenanteyes.com and type in the promo code VMPR to support the network. Protect yourself and your family from the imminent threats on the internet. www.covenanteyes.com, code VMPR, live porn free. Thank you for listening to Virgin Most Powerful Radio. Thank you. God bless you. Keep the faith.
Finding the right doctor for your obstetric and gynecological needs can be difficult. Do you want a doctor with impeccable references and ethical practices? One who is trustworthy and well-researched? Dr. Aceta is that doctor. As a faithful Catholic in the Kern County community, Dr. Aceta provides expert care guided by his Catholic teachings, focusing on the patient's needs according to his own specialty. Call Dr. Aceta for all your obstetrics and gynecological needs at 661-595-5617. Again, 661-595-5617 for quality care without compromise.
Buying or selling your home or your business property? This is Terry Barber. Real Estate for Life underwrites the Terry and Jesse Show. And they can connect you to one of 900 pro-life real estate agents around the world. And when they receive their referral fee, they will give 80% of it to a pro-life organization. Wow! That's 80%! realestateforlife.org, 877-LIFE, US 1.
Now, back to Hands-on Apologetics with Gary Machuda. If you'd like to join the conversation, call 888-526-2151. Here's Gary.
And welcome back, everybody. We're chatting with Christine Flynn about the spiritual but not religious movement, and also, about some New Age thought that kind of trickles into the movement. And so we talked about, what exactly does it mean when somebody says they're spiritual but not religious. I guess we should probably talk about what is New Age. Are there a couple of major tenets of New Age? Actually, you already kind of mentioned a few, like the inner goddess, that we're all God.
Right. Yeah. So I would say it really starts off with that all life, I mean, not even just life, a rock, a wall, it's all part of one shared existence. We're all manifested of the same, universal spirit in a way. If you think of if a white sheet was put over the entire world, and you'd see, structures rise up out of it, but it's all the same sheet. So I think that probably encapsulates what the basis for the New Age thought is. And so we're all, part of that sheet, but there is that individual movement happening within it. And then we're also just all trying to ascend from this, the prison of our bodies, and to realign ourselves with that kind of multi-dimensional, behind the veil existence that we all have. Because there is, we have this divine spark that we're trying to fully realize in whatever form we are currently manifested in. Yeah. I think probably just that's where the basis of it. All the other beliefs kind of come from that, I think.
Yeah, I think so too. It's the rock is God. I should say divine. The tree is divine. I am divine. You're divine.
Right.
But the problem is, if I'm divine, then why can't I walk on water and perform miracles?
It's probably because you just don't believe enough. I actually remember reading that in a book of some kind of Easternish guru who said that, he can walk through walls and he can levitate. Of course, nobody's seen him do that. But and you should be able to as well. If you fully believe that, you are one with the wall or one with the air, you should be able to levitate and walk through. And if you're unable to do that, you walk and you bump your head on the wall. Well, that's your fault for not believing enough. So it's always, the bar is always set just a little bit higher so you can't actually attain any of these things.
Yeah, right. Yeah, it's funny that you would expect that the people writing the books can already do this stuff. But when push comes to shove, they maybe have a handful of people in history that have achieved that level. And of course, one of them is Jesus Christ, which, they don't follow, but they'll use and maybe quote him now and then.
Yeah. He's just one of many Christs, I think is what they believe. I remember I used to be a big fan of the singer-songwriter Jewel back in the day. And one of her songs, and when I was thinking about coming on your show and what we're going to talk about, I remember one of the lyrics was that we will all be Christed when we hear ourselves say that we are that to which we pray. So once we all figure out that we are God, we will become God. We will blossom into that. We just have to fully believe and understand and try to dive into those that metaphysical or spiritual dimension that we can't see now, but it's there. You just have to trust us.
Yeah. So it's pantheistic. Everything is God, But,
Right.
actually that lyric from Jewel, I think, is very perceptive in that. So if everything God, then everything is one. It's monistic.
Mm-hmm.
And oddly, the thing is, and I have New Agers, I never got a decent reply, is, well, if everything's God, who do you pray to? Are you talking to yourself?
Yeah. I remember years after, or a while after, because I'd given up all this stuff quite a long time ago. So I felt like it was, I started maybe thinking that, did I just imagine all of this? But years after, I was talking to my husband about it, and he's like, well, who put you in the prison? Like, why don't, the prison of your body, why don't you just free yourselves then? I'm like, oh yeah, I guess I never really thought about it. There's no straight answer. You're not going to get a straight answer.
Yeah, sure. So that's kind of, I guess the carrot on the stick is that you can achieve this divinity, but you have to dive deeper and deeper into New Age thought and fantasy, really, hoping to eventually attain this unattainable goal.
And if you don't do it in this life, well, you can have another try. Reincarnation figures heavily into this, and it's not the kind of reincarnation where you are eventually going to, poof out of existence because you've freed yourself from the cycle of suffering and samsara. It is just, you get to reincarnate again and try to, get closer and closer. So every time that you have a new life, you are refining and getting just a little bit closer to who you're really supposed to be.
Yeah. Now, what do they base this belief on for reincarnation?
I don't know. I mean, I think, I think it's really interesting, and possibly, some spiritual warfare is part of this, because the devil knows the past and he can influence things in the present time. So, I remember years ago having dreams that seemed really, really real, and it was about past lives of mine, or what I perceived as past lives. And it wasn't until, relatively recently, I was like, well, clear that wasn't true. But that doesn't mean I wasn't looking at somebody's life. It could have been planted there, in an act of spiritual warfare to make me think that this stuff was real. But I think, again, it's all subjective. And Carl Jung did a lot of work in trying to make sense of dreams in our consciousness and all this stuff. And, I think it's just we all dream every night. We have different dreams, whether we remember them or not. But if you put enough meaning into it, you might start thinking that you're seeing past lives. And yeah,
that's a really good point. Now, when you believed in reincarnation, was it like the Hindu system where, if you are against karma, you'll actually incarnate in lower species, where if you're, with karma, then you kind of ascend? Or is it just always ascending?
Always ascending. Yeah. So it is a bit different. And you always get to my belief in reincarnation. And, it's funny, I started looking around on, what characterizes New Age belief. And actually the Vatican put together, they did a council on New Age, which I thought was really interesting. And it's a lengthier document. It's about 70 pages. Mm-hmm. But they listed off some of the typical beliefs of New Age. And I thought for years that I was very special. Of course, again, there's a lot of spiritual narcissism in the New Age movement, or spiritual but not religious movement. And I thought that I had special knowledge, that I had seen behind the veil and all this stuff. And then I go and look, and the Vatican has it in like bullet points of all my beliefs. I was like, man, I'm not unique at all. I really thought I was something special. So, it's
that's funny.
Yeah,
so you were humbled by bullet points.
Yes. Look at that. I'm glad. After years of thinking that I really had some kind of special knowledge, it's good to have that happen. I'm glad.
Yeah.
Being humbled is a good thing.
It's interesting you point that out, because that is also a feature I've known over the years looking at the New Age movement, is this kind of narcissism where, of course, if you're God or you're divine, then why would you'd look down your nose on all the other people that, aren't aware of even their divinity.
Yeah. And of course, you as the follower of New Age have some esoteric knowledge that nobody else does, which means that you are farther along in your ascension, and you are going to get there faster, or whatever there is, than anybody else around you.
Yeah, and then there's the flip side belief that, that I'm the most noble and open-minded and all-embracing person around. It's a strange juxtaposition of, narcissism and then this idea that I am so all-embracing where religious people aren't.
Right, which in itself is a very arrogant position to be in, that my religion is correct, my spirituality is correct, and your Catholic religion or whatever isn't. And so they wind up, I'm just calling the kettle black. Yeah.
And, for me, I think that's one of the reasons why it's so hard to get people out of that mind science belief where, their identity is their belief. They kind of have to step off the throne of God and say, I am not God, to kind of do that. And, people normally wouldn't do that because they tied their whole personality into, this is who I am, it's what I am.
Yeah, very painful. Yeah. I'm not going to lie about that. This whole transformation, even when I started, coming out of atheism and started possibly looking at Christianity, I still tried to retrofit some of my old beliefs in. And I had a hard time. Even, I was like, well, maybe the stuff that I did believe all those years ago, I got away from it, but maybe there is some truth there. During our journeys, when Pat especially was starting to look at, get into more of the New Age stuff before he hit the philosophy route and went running that way. It looked at, Jesus is an archetype. There you can learn. So, each apostle wasn't a real person. They were just archetypes of who we are. And, who do you fit in with? It's like, take a quiz. Who are you most like type thing. Mm-hmm. And so but it doesn't work because one, these are real people, but it's a very painful process to try to get rid of all of this stuff and to realize how wrong I was, that's nobody wants to know that. Yeah. But it was, I'm glad I did it. And I'm glad that I took a hard look at the old beliefs and then, looked at Christianity and see it's just completely incompatible. You can't hold on to any New Age beliefs and still be, a real believer of a Christian.
Yeah, very true, very true. I think we're coming up on the break, so we might not be able to hear your answer on this, so you can think about it. When you were telling your story, you mentioned how you became disenchanted with the New Age beliefs and were kind of pained by it. And then it was through that pain that you began to actually honestly look at whether God exists and so on. So maybe when we come back, if you wouldn't mind, maybe we could kind of investigate that. Like, what did you find so unsatisfying with your spiritual but not religious, New Age-ish kind of outlook? Sound good?
Sounds good.
All right, very good. We're chatting with Christine Flynn of thecatholicmama.com, all one word, thecatholicmama.com podcast, and we're talking about being spiritual but not religious, and also the tie-ins with the New Age movement. Stay tuned, folks. Lots to come on the other side of the break. Listen to Hands on Apologetics.
Welcome, Daniel. You're on the line. What's on your mind, brother?
Hi, I just wanted to share a testimony about Virgin Most Powerful Radio. I had a buddy at work who, he's a lukewarm Catholic guy, and I wanted him to start listening to the Terry and Jesse show, so I kept telling him to download the app, and he kept putting me off. So one day, I grabbed his phone and I downloaded the app for him. I went on vacation, and I kept telling him to listen to it. He was kind of put me off. I came back from vacation. He comes to my cubicle, and he says to me, "Hey, man, I've been listening to Terry and Jesse's show, and it's great." And it's made a big impact in his life. The guy, he's going to weekly adoration a couple times a week. He goes to the Mass in the morning. Mm-hmm. He's an on-fire Catholic, and he promotes the Terry and Jesse show in the Virgin Most Powerful Radio.
Daniel, what a testimony. And I want to encourage our listeners to get those cards by going to virginmostpowerfulradio.org and do what Daniel's doing. Go out and spread the faith by inviting people to listen to Virgin Most Powerful. Daniel, thanks for your testimony, brother. God love you.
You're welcome.
Hebrews 11:3 says, "By faith we come to understand." According to St. Augustine, understanding is the reward of faith. Therefore, seek not to understand that you may believe, but believe that you may understand. May God grant us a strong living faith in Him and His divine plan of salvation, and help us to believe so that we may understand.
Buying or selling your home or your business property? This is Terry Barber. Real Estate for Life underwrites the Terry and Jesse Show. And they can connect you to one of 900 pro-life real estate agents around the world. And when they receive their referral fee, they will give 80% of it to a pro-life organization. Wow! That's 80%! realestateforlife.org, 877-LIFE-US1.
This is Jesse Romero. You're listening to Hands-On Apologetics with Gary Machuda on Virgin Most Powerful Radio.
And welcome back, everybody. We're chatting with Christine Flynn of the CatholicMama.com podcast, and we're talking about spiritual but not religious and the tie-ins with the New Age movement. And Christine, right before the break, I kind of set you up for the next question, which was, you mentioned when you were coming out of this mind thought, this system of thought, that some of the beliefs and tenets kind of wore on you. And, if you maybe explain a little bit more about that.
Yeah, people in the New Age will do different things to try to, achieve some kind of higher knowledge of the hidden self. And for me, it was always dreams and dream interpretation, meditation, that sort of thing. And, the more I had a dream and I would try to interpret the dream, it seemed my dream life was very active for a long time. And I was hooked to those feelings. I'd be excited to go to bed at night and see what I was going to dream that night. Yeah. And after a while, whether it was stress from school or work, or just, I was too tired and I didn't dream or something like that, the dreams slowly just stopped happening. And I would probably get more stressed about it. And the dreams, just really dwindled. It used to be, if you imagine you turn on the bathtub faucet and water gushes out. And by the end, it felt like maybe there was a drip here or there. Every few weeks, maybe I would get a dream and they seemed more silly than meaningful. And so I really felt abandoned by the universe. And it's very similar, though, if you have somebody who goes to church because they like the music or they like the way it makes them feel. Well, if the music changes or, somebody who's preaching they don't agree with and they get bad feelings from it, they're more likely to leave and try to find something else. And the same for me, those dreams stopped. I stopped getting those good feelings from my dreams and feeling like I was interconnected with some higher power. And so I started wondering, did I make all this stuff up? I did. Yeah. Spoiler, I did make it all up. But it was really jarring to me. And I felt like, well, maybe if I did make this up, what else that I believed? If I thought the dreams were real and they meant something, but they actually did and it stopped, I felt very betrayed. I was like, well, maybe this stuff isn't real anyway. So let me look at all my beliefs. And do I have good, again, I was only looking through the resources that I felt comfortable looking through, the dreams websites that I would go to or the authors or books that I was comfortable reading. And if they didn't have a good explanation for the problem of suffering, or if they didn't have a really good evidence that something existed besides this planet, maybe I'm just wrong about all of it. And now it's time to get rid of all of it as well.
Yeah. Very good. And with New Age, there's people who are into pyramids, people are into UFOs, people into crystals, people into dreams like yourself, or so many different things, and usually I'll jump from one to another.
Because you can always.
You were fortunate.
Yeah. I guess I was. I would actually say, I don't believe in mistakes. So the idea of sin was just incompatible with the way I used to think. I don't believe in mistakes. If you learn from something that happened, that's not a mistake. That's just me progressing down my spiritual path. But it only gets you so far, because after a while, I started getting despondent and didn't have good answers. And those good feelings, all of it started to feel like maybe this was all a mistake.
Yeah. Did you come from the mindset that if something bad happened to you, that you actually willed it to be bad, or
yes, that was something that I meant to say this because we were talking about reincarnation earlier. In my belief system, before you were born into the next life, you were given some kind of freedom to choose what happened, the big things. And then if deja vu happens in this life, that just means that you are doing something that you had seen before you were born and you were on your right path. And then if, you would get together with other spirits and you'd say, hey, let's get together in this next life and you'll be my kid and I'll be your best friend or you'll be my husband. And then we all go in together into this life. I forgot what was your question?
Yeah, about causing bad things to happen.
That's right. Thank you. So we got to choose. We got to choose all of this ahead of time. So if anything happened, I chose it when I was more aware of the spiritualness of things. When I was more aware of that stuff, I chose the bad, and I just have to live through it now. And this will help me along in my path. And if something bad happens to somebody else because of me, well, that's just part of their path, and they chose it.
Yeah.
So if I was mean to them or we dated and then I just disappeared and never talked to them again, well, that's just part of the path, and we all chose it. So you should have known better.
They literally asked for it.
Yeah, you literally asked for it. That's exactly right. So it became, I did a lot of damage with that kind of thinking because, the bad stuff happens to me, but I didn't want to process the suffering because suffering's tough. Nobody really wants, it's hard to deal with suffering. So when the bad stuff would happen to me, there was a big wall, didn't really want to process any of it. And then if I did anything unfeeling or mean or bad to somebody else, well, that's just part of the journey. So, deal with it. Very cold. And again, I did a lot of damage when I felt that way.
Yeah, I think that's probably one of the most sinister aspects of New Age thought is that the victim is actually the perpetrator. So if you get raped, that's your fault. You brought it on yourself. It wasn't the rapist. And
for a belief system that is rooted in the idea that we're all interconnected and we're all part of this one giant spirit realm or whatever, it really is unfeeling that, we can do whatever we want. You wouldn't do that to yourself,
Yeah.
Like how it just, for a belief system that prides itself on the interconnectedness of everything, it doesn't seem like that in practice.
Yeah, very good. And that's funny you say it's not feeling because, earlier you said, the driving force behind being spiritual, not religious, is feelings.
Yeah.
So it's weird. It's like another contradiction.
It really is. I think it is just a bundle, just a big knotted mess of contradictions that if anybody tried to press me on any of this over time, I wouldn't have had a good answer as to why I believe this, but not this. And what about this special scenario? It just nothing would have fit, but it wouldn't have mattered because I'm on my journey and I'll understand it at some point. And you don't understand it because you're just a little farther down on your journey. You'll get there though.
Yeah, right. Yeah, very good. And that explains a lot because you're right. Standard apologetic arguments, it's just like it bounces right off them. It's like, no, I'm supposed to teach you. You're not supposed to teach me. And
yeah. I know that there's a lot of very popular, more new age authors, Deepak Chopra, Eckhart Tolle. There's a lot of those out there. I personally thought that I probably had more knowledge than them. So I was so narcissistic, and the idea of ever looking at somebody else and believing and following them was just unreal to me. They may have been a good guide, but no thanks. I know best. Even better than, I guess, best-selling authors or something. I don't know. It's just, just a very, very, very arrogant position to be in. That does cause a lot of damage.
Yeah. So what kind of advice could you give Catholics who maybe they have friends who are in, maybe even family members? How do we pierce that layer of defense?
I still have family members who are really into New Age, and I and also still, my skeptical dad. So yeah, I'm living on both ends, trying to figure this out myself. But I think for the New Age, and what really, I have a couple of friends who are considering coming into the Catholic faith, but they still hold on to a lot of that. They want the personal spiritual experiences, and they don't think that the faith has it. Well, that's not true. Our Catholic faith, the saints, there's such a rich spirituality that it's not like in Eastern-ish or New Age meditation where we try to empty ourselves out and remain empty and get rid of any feelings of connectedness or dependence that we have on others and stay empty. In the Catholic faith, our prayer life, it's aimed at emptying ourselves out of, the sin and making room for God's love. And that can be it is a much more powerful experience than anything that New Age followers try to mimic in their own lives. So I think showing whether just offering resources on great Catholic saints who have had, those profound spiritual connections with God that are recorded would be an interesting place to start. And also just showing that I always used to think that the Catholic Church was a middleman to God. So they wanted to, they wanted to be the gatekeepers. And if you needed that, fine. If that's what you need in your weakness, go ahead, follow the Catholic faith or whatever. But I think if you can show that the Catholic faith is robust, it does encourage that kind of the prayer and communion with the Lord, that it isn't just this stodgy middleman. And it really, the church is there to bring souls to heaven and have that positive experience. I think that probably would go a long way. And of course, as always, living a joyful Catholic life, because I tried so hard when I was New Age to have the type of mindset and joy that I have now as a Catholic, but could never get. So I'm hoping that by living this, that people will just be curious as to why I am the way I am now, and I'll be more than happy at that point to tell them why.
Yeah, that's a fantastic point, because usually with people with course of belief systems, that the belief system says you should be happy and joyful, and they try to convince themselves they are, but deep down they know they're not,
Yeah.
and when you run into someone who's genuinely joyful in the Lord, that could get the gears rolling,
Yeah, at least to start breaking down the misconceptions about the Catholic faith and who we are as Catholics. It's just playing the long game, as always with a lot of our evangelization. It's a long game, and it unfortunately, I don't think it can come at it with facts initially. Now, initially, if somebody had come with me at facts about the Catholic faith, like, oh, you're just too left-brained. You need to be more right-brained and be more feelings-based. If somebody had come to me as a Catholic when I was steeped into the New Age. But if we can start with experiences and proof that the Catholic Church embraces the saints and their personal communion and prayer life with God, I think that could go a long way.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Well, Christine, man, the hour has flown. Where can our listeners go to check out all your awesome podcasts?
Well, you've done such a nice job of telling people already, so thank you. But again, it's thecatholicmama.com, MAMA for mama, all one word. I post most of my podcast episodes that I do on the blog there. So whether you listen to iTunes or on Stitcher, Google Play, Spotify, all the usual spots, you can find the Catholic Mama podcast there. I put up 2 full-length episodes a week, as well as a Friday, about 10-minute episode or less, where I've been diving through the Catholic Catechism bit by bit each week.
Okay. Well, awesome. Great. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show. We appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks, Gary.
All right. That's Christine Flynn. And again, thecatholicmama.com. Check it out, folks. Great stuff. And, man, I can't believe it's already time to shut down the Midwest Command Center, turn off the dojo lights. Thank you all for listening. We appreciate it. And coming up next, High Impact Catholic Talk coming at you with the Terry and Jesse Show. And God willing, we'll be back tomorrow to do this thing we call Apologetics. Hope everybody have a blessed day. Bye-bye.
In the 1990s, I lived and worked in Hollywood. But when my wife Betty's mom took ill, we relocated to Orange County. And it was during this time in our lives that I converted to Catholicism. Once my eyes were opened to the truth, I couldn't learn enough about the faith. But I had less free time than ever, especially with a long commute. That's when I discovered the real value of Catholic audio. Listening to cassette tapes transformed my daily commute into a miniature retreat. And that's the beauty of Virgin Most Powerful Radio today. Since the podcasts are archived, you can listen anytime on our smartphone app. I know how listening to Catholic audio can bring you closer to Christ and His Church. So I encourage you to visit the App Store or go to vmpr.org and download the app today. It just might change your life. I'm Matthew Arnold for Virgin Most Powerful Radio.